Hello, everyone. We are live and maybe a couple minutes late um, because technical difficulties.
As usual, I feel
Yeah.
like, unfortunately. Um,
But things are working,
yeah,
so it's good, right? Like,
yes,
yeah.
yes, I'm glad that did the trick. Good old restarting the computer. So,
Yeah. I think we're really excited about our UX Help Desk episode. These are always fun for us to do, even when we're not doing them live. So I feel like doing them live is also kind of cool. Yeah. So I guess should we get started with like our professionally recorded intro?
yeah, let's do it. Hello, friends. Welcome to the UX IRL podcast, where we examine user experience design at work and in the world around us. I'm Mary Fran Goings, a senior UX designer at Health Trust.
And I'm Michelle Chin, design ops, design systems, and accessibility expert. We're two friends that love UX and wanted to talk about what UX was like in real life. And so today we are taking some real life questions from Reddit. And we also are taking questions from the audience as well. Um, and in this help desk episode, we will be looking at people's questions and, I don't know, giving unsolicited advice, I guess. Well, maybe it's solicited because they posted on Reddit. But yeah, throughout the episode, if you have questions, feel free to post it in the comments and we'll pick a couple as well. So, yeah. Mary Fran, why don't you get us started with the first question?
Yeah, sure. So the first question is from user dubwubwubwub2. Uh, and they write, topic is hired because of the maturity I brought my previous org. Told my opinions are too strong today by my boss. Advice from veterans appreciated. So the context here, I am a lead designer with 15 years of experience. When I joined my company, my manager told me to have a strong point of view in several one on ones. And so I ramped up, developed that point of view, even did some deep research. I had friction with the PM, who is very unwelcoming to me. I am met with no and defensive statements at every turn. This person even says no to every meeting request and is very passive aggressive towards me. So I documented instances, shared it with my manager. He went and spoke to the team leads and is now saying my opinions are too strong and that I need to step back and ask more questions. I was asking questions, but I guess rocking too many boats. How do I work with said terrible PM going forward?
Oof. This is annoying. I'm so annoyed for this person. Um, yeah, I guess like there's just it's like extra drama that you just don't need to have because I feel like everyone, wants to come to work to do a good job. No one's trying to like, I don't know, destroy things. But yeah, I part of me wonders if like and I think a lot of times like when you have these situations, like it's not so much you are the issue as it is them kind of like maybe they have like they're intimidated by your years of experience or maybe they're intimidated the fact that you have an opinion and aren't you know I guess like wishy-washying or being I guess especially from a UX perspective like just doing as they say, maybe that's an issue as well, right? So
Yeah.
I'd be really curious to like hear how those conversations have gone to be able to unpack that some more. um but yeah, I guess like that's kind of like my first gut reaction. I don't know, what are your thoughts?
I can empathize. I wasn't in a situation exactly like this, but I have been in a situation before where it was difficult. I had a difficult time communicating with somebody, and I felt like, I was met at every turn with, like, well, no one would do this, or no one would use this. And did you actually do research on this? Like, almost to the point of unprofessional.
Yeah, ouch.
um, So I don't know if that's what's going on here per se. I know we don't have all the details, but I can empathize being in a situation like that and trying to figure out how to navigate it for sure. I think my first thought here was I didn't get a clear indication of what the relationship is like with the manager. It sounds like they shared, they documented everything, shared it with the manager, and then for the manager to come back and be like, I don't know. So I kind of wonder
Yeah.
what's like,
I
is the manager somebody you feel comfortable with having like a candid conversation with? Because if you do, I would start there, um, and try and unpack more of like what's been said and like, um, I don't know.
yeah,
It's hard when stuff like, yeah.
I think like the big thing is like in this post they said that their manager went and spoke with the team lead, so it's kind of like it's kind of weird. It's to have depending on how that conversation went, right? Like it's got to be kind of awkward if like your manager is going to other people going, "Hey, how is working with so and so? Tell me more or whatever." Right? Like it's a lot of times as a manager, you want the your direct report to try to resolve this on their own first, right? So
Yeah.
because it gets weird when you bring in management, right? Everyone gets weirded out by it. It's like telling your
Yeah.
mom, you're like telling your telling your
Yeah.
parent on who's bullying you. So
Well, it seems like that's what they did, and yeah, like I know the manager went and talked with people. I guess excuse me, what I'm curious about is like, I think at that point, like if the manager comes in, the manager also owes, like if the manager gets involved, the manager also owes an explanation, like too, of like what's, I guess how they framed things, like what was their plan of action, right? Like after hearing all of this, like did they go and with the intention of kind of trying to just hear the other side, or like what was I don't know what
yeah,
actually happened, but it like I think the communication of what happened and like kind of what was the plan and then what was the outcome of that and working together on a path forward, it just sounds like the manager said like take a step back. I don't
yeah.
know.
And I think that's the other thing. Like, if I was this person and then I was, told when I was hired, hey, like, we need you to have a strong opinion because of X, Y, and Z reason, you're like, got it, will do. And then your manager's like, actually, now your opinion's too strong. Like, I would be having a conversation like, I'm confused because I was hired. Like, I would start that conversation of like, we had discussed that I was hired to have a strong opinion. Like, where's the disconnect and like what, and maybe it's just like kind of understanding and unpacking things of like, maybe the other team isn't used to having someone with such a strong opinion or an opinion at all, right? Like it could be as simple as that. Um, but I like Spider's Corner mentioned that it sounds like the manager is kind of a pushover,
Yeah,
which,
yeah, I
yeah,
was just reading that too. Yeah, it does feel that way. It's hard because if you ideally, I think, I mean, you made a great point, and it does sound like this person tried to resolve it on their own by setting up meetings with the product manager. I think that's the hard part is like when the other person shuts down, like, what do you do?
yeah,
And so I would have loved to have seen a more like rather than telling the IC like you need to take a step back and ask more questions or whatever, like trying to facilitate like a let's come together, let's have a path forward where we can kind of try and like foster a better relationship together rather than just kind of putting it all on this IC.
yeah. And I think, to this person's point, they asked, how do I work with said terrible PM going forward? Um, and I think it's like having some of those conversations and that understanding. And maybe that's something, both of their managers can facilitate of like, hey, we need everyone to work together. Um, and also, like, I think, maybe if you don't know the PM as well, right, it couldn't hurt to get to know them and have like, a one on one that's like more of a human or casual conversation. Like, if you work in the same location, maybe you grab lunch together or just like have a coffee chat or something. Just to like, I don't know, kind of extend an olive branch, right? To like build, you don't have to become best friends, but it's like at least building some sort of like connection so work conversations can go a little bit smoother.
Yeah,
I don't
I agree.
But that's tough. I hope they get that resolved because it's no fun. Um, I think worst case scenario, maybe you can switch projects. Um,
Yeah.
all right,
Yeah.
let's go to the next question.
Oh, Michelle, I can't hear you. I don't know if it's just
Oh,
me.
I've been muted.
Oh,
Great.
okay.
So this entire
Like I hear you
time,
now. Okay.
oh, maybe okay. Hopefully, maybe. Did you hear me before? Yeah, you did.
I could hear it, yes.
Okay.
Like throughout all of this, it was just when
Okay.
you were
Yeah,
asking
I
the
think it's
next
because I
question.
switched the screen. Okay, I'll start over.
Okay.
So mystery person says, "Would you consider me a UX designer? Need advice on positioning myself in the job market." So they mentioned that they're at a career crossroads and could really use some insight. They recently moved to a new country and am struggling to find position themselves as a web UX UI designer in the job market. At their last role, they were at a large corporation and designed like what's new visuals for new features, walkthrough animations for product updates, visuals to support articles explaining new functionalities. And they worked with cross functionally with other teams. But at the end of the day, their output was highly visual. And now that they're job hunting, they're realizing that hiring managers might not see this as real UX. So, they were wondering if you were a hiring manager, would you consider their experience UX? Why or why not? How can they reposition themselves to land an intermediate UX UI designer role? And what specific skills or case studies should they highlight to better sell themselves? All right. What are your thoughts on this?
I think it's especially like their experience around walkthroughs and like getting the user like up to speed faster. Like there's some good stuff here, like that I think that they could leverage. But you can always find like something that you've done that you can frame as um, UX, because really we're all like trying to help the user in different ways, right? Like it might not be explicitly in our job title, but like before I was doing UX, I was designing emails and writing some copy and doing that. And a lot of the work that went into that was really trying to like optimize the email, right? To like get the user the most relevant information quickly. Um, and that's UX that ties into UX. So I think thinking through like, especially anything you can do around metrics these days, like what was the improvement, like in terms of like maybe you reduce the number of steps for onboarding with this walkthrough, like people were getting up to speed much faster, like a success rate through that. There are a lot of different ways you could look at that, but that's kind of the exciting thing too. Is I think when you're trying to like break into UX, you can really be intentional in your current role about finding ways to incorporate methods into what you're doing. Uh, if you're trying to leverage past work that you've done, I think it's still possible. I think you just have to think through again, like um, what changes, what impactful changes did you make, and kind of how can you frame it that way. Um, Michelle, what's your take?
Yeah, so I definitely agree. Like, I think anytime you're doing any sort of design work, it is problem solving and, trying to think about the user of like, I want them to see this, I want them to understand the content. So there is UX, even though there might not be, you know, I don't know, explicit steps that you were taking. You were definitely thinking about the user. Um, so I think in terms of like, showcasing some of your experience, like thinking about a little bit more focused on like the actual UX work you did. So, did you think about the user? How did you think about the user? And these could have all been decisions like really quickly done in your head. But if you can So I guess a lot of UX is showing your thought process and your strategic thinking behind the decisions you're making. So if you can take some of the work that you've done and illustrate how you've thought about the user, the steps you took, things that you considered to influence the final decision, then I think that is going to be really helpful. You might not have these artifacts from before, but I think it's totally fine if you recreate the artifacts based on your thought process to kind of illustrate this is what I was thinking, this is how I got to this final design. And I think the other thing is like, as you're looking for jobs, they'll say like, need you a minimum requirement. It's like 5 years doing UX UI work. If you've done that for 5 years or 6 years or however long, you can summarize that in your resume. Because I think what's hard is that recruiters and hiring managers are looking at job titles, and your job title might not match and might not make sense, even though you've done the work or have the experience. So I found that like having a summary at the top saying like I have 15 years of UX experience, even though it wasn't necessarily like per position, but like or your positions weren't explicitly UX, that helps the recruiter and hiring manager go, okay, this person is someone that I can continue to review their resume. Other than that, if they have to figure that on their own, they're not going to want to do that, and they're just gonna be like, oh, this person was just a visual designer, doesn't have the experience, right? So
Yeah.
aligning a lot of that to what they're looking for is also super helpful.
Yeah, keywords as well, like that come up in the job description. Like you can leverage those and tie that into how you're framing, the impacts that you had, the work you did, the problems you were trying to solve. Like I think that'll help, like especially when you don't have the title to like catch their attention as well, and especially if it's run through a system looking for those keywords too.
Yeah. I think that's the thing is like especially with like resumes with the automated like review systems, and also recruiters who might or might not have design experience or extensive like understanding of design work. um, they're going by matching keywords. Like that, you don't want to have them have to translate what you did into like what the job description is. So like the more closely you can align, the better, right? So you're just trying to get your foot in the door with like a recruiter to then meet the hiring manager. Um, but yeah, it's a fun game. All right, let's go to the next question. Okie doke.
Okay. Yeah, this next one is around career goals and kind of moving through your UX career journey. So this person has been a designer for the last 4 years, mostly been involved in startups with small teams, around 8 to 40 people. They've worked with only 2 to 3 people on the design team. Wasn't any defined hierarchy. They did things collaboratively. It's been 4 years, and they feel like their design skills have really grown, especially understanding that design is not restricted to designers, but rather being able to transform the company's goal with the help of design. So now they're looking to learn more in kind of growing their career and want to join a team with a large number of designers. And they're really wondering if this is going to be a good track for them. They don't want to be a manager. They do want to remain being an individual contributor. And so they're asking what our advice is, or what in general seniors' advice would be in terms of, where to go from here.
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. It's like once you have experience, like I think it's when you're starting your career, you're so focused on, I just need to get experience, right? And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, I have it, but you're maybe it's harder to figure out like what's actually next without going straight to the manager path. Um, and I think a lot of it is like trying to explore your own self interests, what you like and what you don't like what you feel like you did really well with, um, and like maybe what's the opposite of what you have experience in, if that interests you. So I think for me, like I when I started my UX career, I jumped into agency work because I was like, I need experience and I need lots of different varieties of experiences. Um, and I got that, and it was chaotic, and I didn't like it. So I was like, I need something that's less crazy. So, um, my next thing, and I was doing mostly like website stuff too. So I wanted to do more product work. Um, so I was like, okay, I want to be in house, and that way I can see like projects and products end to end and have that follow through and see like long term impact. So that's where I started focusing working in house. Um, and I think also, you know, I at an agency we had a scrappy team, and it was usually like only one of us per project. So I was kind of working on my own. But I definitely wanted to be with a bigger team to like learn and grow more and do more collaboration. So um, that's what I set out to do. And then I kind of got tired of doing product design and I wanted to take a little bit of a different approach to my career. So I went into design ops, which is like me doing UX, but like not with pixels. Um, so yeah, it's just like, you know, trying to figure out like what I'm interested in, what I like and what I don't like, and like reflecting. So I've done a lot of that. Um, so I think that's like where I would start of like kind of just taking an assessment of like what you've done, what you like, what you didn't like, to see then where what your options might be. There's this book that I really recommend. It's called Designing Your Work Life, which is by Bill Burnett and Dave Evans, who wrote like a Designing Your Life book and talk about design thinking. So this book is really helpful in kind of breaking down, you know, what like work means to you, how that fits into your life, like, what you don't like, where you need to be. And that helped me sort out a lot in terms of like, you know, did I want to really drop doing like practical UX work in product and go into design ops? Um, that kind of really helped me get sorted out. But yeah, what are your thoughts, Mary Fran?
I love that recommendation because one of the things I really appreciate about that book is there are, if you're somebody like me who likes exercises to try and think through these things and sort of, you know, gradually document and try to better understand, you know, like where are you finding value in your work and what gets you excited, you'll like this. There are a lot of different activities and exercises that they offer in the book that I think are good to revisit at different points in your career, and you know maybe even within the same job, trying to figure out kind of where you want to go next. Uh, this question resonates with me a lot because I feel like I was in a similar position. Although I think in my situation, I was the UX team of one for a long time starting out. And so I really, really wanted to be on a larger team. And I'm really glad I did that. Like being at Citrix with you, with our like one of the best PD teams. Like we had such a good group there. Uh, I learned so much from being able to work with so many different people. But I think the thing that I missed was being able to have like I had a voice within PD, but I feel like in such a large organization, it's kind of hard to I don't know, have a bigger voice. Like I think design in general, like there's so much going on and there's so many I don't know. I discovered what I really wanted. I thought was I'm trying to I'm trying to be tactful about this. It's like uh, I really like working for like a mid-sized company where it's like I can collaborate with other designers. Like I don't want to be the only one there because I like being able to have other designers to bounce ideas off of. I love cross collaboration, but it is nice to have like somebody else with a design perspective to kind of like get fresh eyes on. But then I would still have ownership. I'd still have, I feel like, a little bit more uh, strategic, like higher level strategic ownership and say in things, which I really like. And I don't know, I just feel like it's also easier to collaborate in an environment like that where it's like there's not so many moving parts and so much red tape that you have to go through.
Yeah, I think like I mean, I think especially like while we were at Citrix, like things had changed quite a bit because it was like I, you know, and it's not. I think part of there's like two things that I think it is. It's like it's enterprise software, so like I feel like that's just
Yeah.
like a big like monolith in so many ways. Um, but also like we were using safe, and so like this is just me gonna throw safe under the bus continuously. We did an episode maybe a couple years ago about how 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 terrible safe was. um so yeah, I think that agile framework was not very agile, and so it made things really difficult to have more of that autonomy, especially I don't know, yeah, like in enterprise where there's so many moving parts and pieces, and um it doesn't have to be like that.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't. And I, like I said, there were a lot of things I liked about being there. And again, like getting to learn from so many different people, and there were interesting projects to work on. But yeah, I think you're right. I think I think safe really put a pin on a lot of things. But yeah, I think thinking through, what you want to learn next, like how do you want to grow your skill set. Like, I mean, I've had times where I'm like, oh, like I want to do more like data viz, or like, oh, I want to do more with quantitative research and data. You find things you're interested in that you want to get more experience in, and that can help drive where you want to go next, the type of company you're looking for. But sometimes you just have to kind of try things out, right? And see how you feel with it, to kind of figure out what's next. So,
Yeah. And I think, you know, you can also ask people. So this is like where mentorship is really good. And you don't have to have like a long term mentorship relationship. But if you go to like a meetup and you meet someone who is like an enterprise designer, you can ask them, oh, what is it? What's it like? And they can tell you, right? If you have questions about like, you know, is it difficult? Do you all use safe? Because then I don't want to work there.
yeah,
But I think it's like you can have those conversations to kind of like get a feel for um, if a space is an ideal next step for you.
yeah.
Um,
It's a lot harder to kind of jump. And with the job market right now, too, to like, oh, I was like, I'll just try enterprise for a little.
and then you're stuck
Yeah.
until the
Yeah.
market gets better. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I think that's great advice.
All right. Let's go to our next question. And if people listening in have questions, they are welcome to put that in the chat. Okay. So this next one is from Slavomir. I like this question. Why does the UX fall apart after handoff? Great question.
I think we've all
So
been there.
they say you spend weeks refining flows, aligning with brand, reviewing with stakeholders, and locking down designs in Figma. Then it goes to dev, and what comes out the other end, dot, 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 just isn't what you designed. Spacing is inconsistent, components don't match, visual hierarchy is off, and somehow it still gets approved and shipped. So, in a big org with layered teams, handoffs, and multiple sign offs, they have the following questions: who actually owns the final UX quality before it goes live? Are designers expected to review on staging? Is there a design QA step? Or are we just expected to accept the live product will always be a close enough version of the design? So they're curious to see how other in house teams handle this, or if we're all just silently gritting our teeth through every release. Oof.
It definitely doesn't have to be this way.
No, for sure.
Yeah. I think first and foremost, developing a good relationship with your development team is like crucial. Uh, I think the earlier you can start talking, the better, but sometimes that's easier if you have like an existing relationship with them. And one of the things that I really like, and it's of course always easier to do this coming in as a new person, but it's not impossible to do it now if you haven't. Be surprised how much people appreciate this too. But I loved Leah Booley in UX Team of One. Her book mentioned something called listening tours, and it's for not just developers, but like your cross-functional teammates, right? Like going around and kind of getting a sense for, how they work, where they see kind of like the big problem areas that they're trying to solve for, for the product, but also I think for process that they're doing, kind of where are their bottlenecks, things like that. So it's really um, a good chance to kind of get to the heart of like what's going on and getting different perspectives on that. But I think even if that feels like a lot to start, like just trying to do like maybe like a half hour one on one where it's like, hey, like get to know them like a little bit more. So you can kind of start to build the conversation from there. And the best relationships I've had with development is when like I'm starting out on something. I'd be like, hey, I was thinking about this. What do you what do you think about that? And like executing on that, and like, or sometimes I'll have like very specific technical questions. But the earlier you can have those conversations and get them involved and kind of aware of what's going on, I think um, the more success you're going to have in terms of like things translating from like Figma to live code. Uh, I think the other thing too is I do think UX needs to be part of the review process, but I think it also comes down to what's critical for release versus what can you do as like a fast follow, like and so we try and be mindful of that too, where it's like, can is it small enough that it can wait, and then having the trust there to know that they can tackle that afterwards, or um and then I think lastly, and this is kind of hard if you're not doing this right now, but I think it's something worth thinking about when you're building into process, like what are the is there a design system in place? Like, is there anything that you're doing, that you or development are doing to make your lives easier? Because the less you have to think about in terms of like pixel perfection, the better. And I know Michelle will have a lot of good things to say about that too, with all of her experience with design systems. But I know that's definitely helped me in terms of communicating, and dev also, like us not having to worry as much about that. If we can get that in place sooner rather than later, it's less to cover, right? When you review, you're not going over every single pixel, but if there's something new, you can highlight that and get into the details. But
Yeah,
Michelle, yeah.
I think, yeah, design systems are a really great way to kind of clean up a lot of these inconsistencies. And that's something that, you don't have to do right away, right? Like you can work up to it. I think a lot of this, especially if you're in house at a big organization, like it's going to take time. I think, part of it's being patient, knowing that you're progressing toward something that is more aligned is really helpful. So, like, like Mary Fran said, like building those relationships, like it's not going to make things fixed overnight. It just takes a little time. I think also like having those conversations might help you have more context around like why things aren't implemented the way they were designed. So a lot of times I'll say, hey, this looks a little off. Like, you know, is, like what could be causing this? And maybe they're like, oh, this is just bad code. We just need to fix it. Or we read the number wrong and it's a simple fix. Or it could be like, actually, the way this is architected was that this was a hack week project and we never fixed the code from the hack week. And so it's really terrible, and if we were to change it to make it look the way the designs would, it would break the entire app, right? Like, so having that context is also really helpful to have. um, I think, these are all really good questions about like, should there be QA? At what point is QA? Do we do review on staging? Who's responsible for the design QA? Like, these are all really great questions to ask your manager or design leadership, because this is something that oftentimes they have to help navigate and collaborate with like engineering and product leadership as well. I know when we were in safe, there's that definition of done, and it's like, what does definition of done mean in terms of like when it comes to design? Does it match like, exactly? And I think to that point we over rotated on like trying to figure out like what did that mean that we never decided, and it was just because we had to ship. So I think also having that context too is like, maybe we can't have pixel perfect yet, but let's work toward that. What are the steps we can take, and we'll gradually get there. I've worked on various teams where there is some level of QA, And like I wish it was more consistent because it's like it sometimes it felt like it depended on like how much either the developers cared or the QA tester, who is like an engineering QA tester, cared about design, or how much the designer cared, right? So like if everyone cares about it, then they're all gonna look for it. I've had teams where they're like, "Hey, we have a build review for you. Can you check it out?" And then I have other teams who are just like, "Whatever, thanks for the designs. We're just gonna ship it," right? So I wish there was more consistency across the board, but it is possible.
Yeah, it is. And the more likely, like the more you do, I think, to build that relationship too, the more likely you are going to be able to have those conversations early. Like I'll have Dev reach out and be like, hey, like I have this, I haven't pushed it to QA yet, but can you take a look at it? Like I had a question about it. Or, so it's nice to have those conversations kind of even before an official review. If there's a question and if they feel comfortable enough asking that, that's great. Like I always try and encourage them like to ask me questions if something comes up. And I think too, like, as one of the things I love about my job is like the cross functional aspect is that people in different roles think about different things. And so having that perspective of things that come up where, like you may not have thought about or like, um, I don't know. It's just I always feel like they have good perspective. Like when we're working on things where they'll think of something from an angle I hadn't thought of before. And so again, like having established that relationship and having those conversations, like really helps you get there faster. And I think there's more comfort there if something is not quite right to have those conversations too.
Yeah. And like Spider's Corner mentioned that not everyone has the same eye. So like that's very
Yeah.
true. Like, because we're designers, we could say, okay, the outline around this button is definitely 4 pixels, but maybe the developer coded it as 3 and didn't notice that it was, you know, slightly off by a pixel, right? But like that's kind of the stuff we would notice. So a lot of times, yeah, there's not like a harmful intent behind it. It just could be like something
Yeah.
that they're just not paying that close attention to because they are focused on other things. So, yeah, having those conversations is really really good, and oftentimes it's like not a big deal. And I think once you start working together more often, knowing what other people are thinking and considering, you'll know to kind of catch that beforehand. So like maybe the next time you work on a design together and it gets shipped, they'll like, okay, let me make sure that I've got the right like border thickness around elements. It's 4 pixels. Like let me just double check, right? Like they'll know to look for that as well.
Yeah. I feel like our annotation tools have gotten better over the years too, which help with communicating things. So,
Yeah, for sure. I think we're at the end of our questions. I don't know if anyone else has any questions that we can answer.
or anyone has additional thoughts about the
Yeah,
questions we
or
talked
any of the
about.
questions. Yeah. In the meantime, I can tell you all I watched the Canva keynote.
Oh,
Um, it was very interesting. Um, yeah, I'll say that. um,
I want to hear more.
it's so they, it's like it looks a lot like Figma, like their design, like they try to punch it up and make it like really like fun, but and so it's cool, like I guess, but they had a lot of like features that they were releasing, and I think the audience that uses Canva, that loves Canva so much, didn't fully understand what to do with these new features. So like it kind of fell flat. Like they introduced like sheets, which is like spreadsheets, I guess, but like data tables, like because they want you to be able to put your data into Canva and then output designs for it, I guess, like at scale, right? So like yeah, I think it looked really cool. But I feel like the Canva audience who's like making flyers for like their swim team's bake sale probably isn't thinking about designing at scale to know to use spreadsheets.
I'm kind of fascinated where that like need, yeah,
So
came
I
from.
my guess is that I don't know, maybe we should place bets in this episode and then follow up a year from now. is that they're trying to make like a design tool more accessible to like your everyday knowledge workers. So, um,
Yeah.
so that you don't have to rely on a design, brand, or marketing team to like make your assets for you. Because that's what it's supposed to do. You're supposed to be able to like dump in your data, and it makes like charts and stuff. Um, and and the charts are like they look visually stunning and everything. And so you don't need a designer. So basically, um, maybe we'll all be looking for new jobs. I don't know. We'll be replaced by Canva. Um, and they also had like an AI tool that was like
Of
you
course
can
they do.
like code stuff. Like you don't need to know how to code. So they like set like a focus group together to like add a AI prompt to like make an app or something. I wasn't paying too much attention, but it's like this kid and this like I guess his mom or grandmother is like watching and they're just like, oh my gosh, we just put in this prompt and it's like written like 400 lines of code. And like the older woman's like, how long would this taken like, irregularly? And he's like, oh, like hours. Like, but it did it in 4 seconds. It was like really like, I don't know. It was a little cringy, but I enjoyed it. Because it was just so random. And I think what I enjoyed most is that like a lot of the Canva audience was just very confused. Um, because yeah, they like kept releasing all these like cool scalable features of like, and now you can take your designs and translate it into like all these different languages. And I feel like people are like, we don't need that. Um, so like there was like 5 people in the audience that was like, woo, like really excited. Um, and then like they mentioned, uh, we know how much you love the remove background tool, and then like the entire like audience starts like cheering, and I was like, I'm like, this is your Canva audience. Like they like that kind of stuff. They don't care
Yeah.
about data and scaling, right? So, um,
Seems too robust for Canva.
yeah, I think they're trying
Yeah.
to like expand their market share, and it should be interesting. I'm really curious to see how this goes because like it's not for your swim meet bake sale.
Yeah.
Yeah, Spider's Corner mentioned Canva is what they think they used for their switch to bingo card, possibly.
Yes. I did not know that's what
Um,
he used for that.
and I think yeah, because like Figma is too difficult to write, like to make a bingo card unless you know Figma, right? So use Canva. And but
I
now
definitely
with
ended
the
up
new
in Figma.
yeah with the new features, you can translate your bingo cards into multiple different languages at scale. You can make like thousands of bingo cards actually.
There you go.
Probably not what anyone wanted, but
We do have a question about senior design roles, and can you get into a senior design role without getting into management? Is there a ceiling?
ooh, I'm going to post this question if I can figure out how to do that. How do I do that? How do I push the question?
While you're getting that um, up there, I do think it's possible to get into
Okay.
a senior design role without becoming a manager. I do think there's some interesting combinations out there. Like there are managers I know that do a little bit of both, um, which I think if I was going to be a manager, I'd want to do. But there are I think a decent number of senior design roles without necessarily having to go into management. I think it's as you move in the senior career, it's like I think there is a ceiling there, like if in terms of like is there a lead role or yeah
Yeah, like, and I think it depends on the company too. Like, more mature companies will have a very distinct
yeah
individual contributor ladder that goes pretty, like, you can retire as an individual contributor with, like,
yeah
I don't know, a ton of experience and not ever have to manage a person in your life, which maybe is ideal for some people. And a bit depending on where you are in life, like, maybe you were a manager, but you want to go back to IC. Um, I worked my way up to principal. And a lot of times there's more like higher level roles. There's like staff, and then I don't know. I've seen like jobs for senior staff, which I'm like, oh my gosh, like, can you? and there's like group, which I'm not even sure how that plays into things. Maybe senior group. Um, so it's pretty wild. But the more you're moving up into those roles, like the expectations of what you're doing is going to be different. So a lot more mentorship of junior level designers, a lot more contributing to strategy,
Yeah.
a lot more pushing the direction of the product. So as if you were like a director level, but maybe not having to navigate nearly as much politics as you need to, but still probably working with forming really good working relationships cross functionally. Um, it's just really like thinking about like the amount of experience and knowledge that you have to be able to like really help support the team and the product. Um,
I think it just depends on the size of the company too, like the scale. Um, Larger companies, I feel like, tend to have more. I feel like more built out. Not necessarily. Again, I think it does, like you said, Michelle, depend on the UX maturity there. But I feel like more often than not, larger companies have like more opportunities for like IC ladders, especially like in design, where smaller places might have like a senior role and maybe a lead role, but like may not have much defined beyond that. That's a great question
yeah.
to ask in interviews too, like about what the what career growth is like at a company for UX. Is there like a defined career ladder plan in place for people who are trying to progress up that icy career path?
Yeah, and I think sometimes it will the ladder goes from individual contributor to management, like up the chain, and that isn't for everyone either, but also maybe that is something. I think the other thing is like when I was at Citrix, I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a manager or not. So I was like, let me try it. And I had the opportunity to. So like there's some flexibility to experiment because it's like for years I was at this crossroads of like IC manager, like I am not really sure which to choose, and I don't like you're not going to know if you like it or not unless you try it. Um like I tried to like through osmosis understand if I would like it by like watching other managers and listening to their perspective, which was helpful, but you really won't know until you try it.
I think it's also one of those things that depends on where you are. I mean, like, and depending on what you want out of it. I think like my manager in particular right now, I've worked with her at two different companies. I like the way she's been able to position herself as a manager where she still manages people and like provides mentorship, is doing strategy at a high level with other, cross functional peers, but also she also still does design work. And like collaborates with us on things, which is really nice. Like she's very hands on without being like micromanagey, which is great. And I feel like if I were ever going to go into management, I would want to be able to do something similar where I could still do design work and collaborate with other designers and work on, strategic initiatives, but it wouldn't just be about like, I can remember another manager I've worked with who went into it and it was just all like financial, like hitting numbers and like, I don't know. And that just made me want to be sick. I'm like, that's not for me. That's not what I want to do.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. And I think I don't know, like I found the player coach thing to be kind of difficult. Like I think I as much as I wanted to stay like working in the files and stuff, like it was just very difficult. So like the way I was doing design was like through collaboration and like guidance as a manager, but I don't know. And I remember like I had to completely drop it at one point because we had to hire and that became like a full-time job. So but yeah, really good question. I think it's cool if you can be an IC like for a really long time. Like I don't know, get like legendary status. Like uh
I feel like that's Andrew.
yeah, like so when Andrew and I were both working at Citrix like almost 10 years ago. Well, yeah, it'll be like 11 years ago, gosh. Um Was it that long ago? Oh my gosh. So yeah, so Jim Callback, who wrote the Jobs to Be Done book, was at Citrix, and he was a principal. And so like anytime he like visited the Raleigh office, we were like, oh my gosh, it's Jim Callback, like legend. I mean, I'd go up and talk to him, and he was like really chill, and I was like, I can't believe I'm talking to this guy. Um, I was like starstruck and like trying not to like be a fangirl, but yeah, it's wild. Like yeah, it's kind of cool, but like like it was always cool because we were always gonna learn something from him when he like collaborated with us. So good times.
That's so cool. I wish I had I wish I had been able to join Citrix sooner.
Yeah, it's all timing. But I'm glad that you eventually joined Citrix, and then we
Same.
got to work together, like at work and
Yeah.
not just outside of work. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah, finally after a long time, I feel like.
Yeah. So it looks like we're at time. So shall we wrap up?
I think so.
I'll put this little
Let's do
fancy
it.
scene on.
This is so cool. Okay, well, we hope you had fun listening to this episode. If you ever have any questions, feel free to send them to us. We love doing these. We'll definitely do it again. You can find our show notes on our new website, uxinreallife.com. We'll eventually be putting up our older episodes. Wow, there as well. And then, as always, we are playing that algorithm game. We would love it if you could rate and review us. Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts.
YouTube and Twitch now.
YouTube, we're YouTube and Twitch. Can you review on Twitch? Uh, but yeah, anywhere you are viewing this 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 podcast or listening to it. Um, yeah,
Yeah, thanks everyone. Yeah, so that wraps it up for like the recorded part, and I guess like this is our like exit out of the live live part too. Um, we do these once a month. Our next one is in May at some point, definitely after the IA conference.
yes,
And then we'll talk about, I don't know what we'll talk about. I don't know if we want to talk about like, and if people have suggestions, you're welcome to mention it in the chat. Um,
yeah.
but uh, yeah, I think, we're up for like talking about UX careers, maybe like the job market, maybe, I don't know, the
I'm
UX
so
of
curious to hear
cookbooks.
what Jared Spool has to say at
Oh, yeah.
IAC. Yeah,
Yeah, maybe we can do a debrief on that, right? Like,
yeah, yeah,
um,
yeah.
I like Avenue's comment, feel like we need a Michelle reacts to Canva keynote.
I would love that too.
Um,
I'm
maybe we
down.
should like do that as like a live stream, just like, I don't know, one evening, like watch it.
That would be fun. Yeah.
Um,
And then
coming
config is
soon.
happening in May as well.
Oh,
Speaking
maybe we
of,
can do that too. We'll
yeah,
just do that and like live stream it.
yeah,
I don't know. It should be interesting.
yeah,
But yeah, thank you for joining everyone. We'll be back again in a couple weeks, and I hope you enjoyed this. It was a lot of fun. I don't know. I like
yeah.
doing these live streams. So,
Same. Me too.
all right.
Uh, Take care.
See ya.
Bye.